Ambassador Hyun-woo walked through the massive doors of the Galactic Peace Summit Hall on Station Alpha 7 and immediately felt like a small fish in an ocean of giants. The ceiling stretched so high above his head that he could barely see it, and the walls were made of some kind of crystal that changed colors every few seconds, reflecting the light from hundreds of different alien species. The Vorthan delegation stood near the center of the room, and they were impossible to miss. Each one was at least 12 feet tall with bodies that looked like they were carved from living diamond. Their leader, Supreme Chancellor Vex, had skin that sparkled like stars, and when he moved, the light bent around him in ways that hurt to look at directly. The Vorthans never sat down because their crystal bodies were too rigid, and they communicated by making sounds like wind chimes in a storm. On the opposite side of the hall, the Quillex representatives scurried around the floor level like shadows that had learned to walk. Their bodies were dark and fluid, constantly shifting shape as they moved between the legs of the larger species. Ambassador Hyun-woo had been warned that the Quillex could become completely invisible when they wanted to, but right now they seemed content to stay visible as small dark shapes no bigger than human children. The Morgak Empire had claimed the largest section of the hall, and their delegation looked like they were ready for war rather than peace. Each Morgak stood 8 feet tall with thick scales covering their bodies from head to toe, and they had 4 arms that ended in claws sharp enough to cut through metal. Their leader, Supreme General Crix, wore armor that looked like it had seen 1,000 battles, and his yellow eyes scanned the room like he was looking for enemies to fight. Everywhere. Hyun-woo looked. He saw the same pattern. Each alien species had brought their greatest warriors, their most famous generals, their most decorated military commanders. The Thanlan Confederacy had sent Admiral Joss, who had never lost a space battle in 40 years of service. The Hegemony Council was represented by War Master Quelm, whose tactical genius was known throughout 3 star systems even. The Peaceful Delthan Collective had brought General Yaris, who commanded their defensive fleets. Then there was the human delegation. Hyun-woo looked around at his own people and almost smiled. They had brought Dr. Min-ho, who studied alien plant biology and could make crops grow in places where nothing should live. They had brought Trade Representative Soo-jung, who knew more about interstellar commerce than anyone else in human space. They had brought Cultural Attaché Jae-sung, who could speak 17 different alien languages and had written 3 books about galactic art. What they had not brought was a single military officer. The other species had noticed this immediately, and Hyun-woo could feel their eyes watching him as he took his seat at the human table. The whispers started almost right away, and even though he could not understand most of the alien languages, he knew they were talking about Earth and wondering why humans had come to a peace summit without showing any military strength. Supreme General Crix was the first to voice what everyone was thinking. His translator device turned his growling words into perfect human speech, though it could not hide the anger in his voice. "Why do the humans hide their warriors?" he demanded, pounding all 4 of his fists on the metal table. The sound echoed through the entire hall, and several smaller species jumped in surprise. "Do they think we are fools? Do they believe we cannot see their deception?" The hall fell, silent as hundreds of alien eyes turned toward the human delegation. Hyun-woo stood up slowly and kept his face calm, even though his heart was beating fast. This was the moment he had been preparing for. During the entire 6-month journey from Earth, we have brought our finest representatives, he said in a voice that carried clearly through the hall. Dr. Min-ho has solved hunger problems on 12 different worlds. Trade Representative Soo-jung has negotiated agreements that have brought prosperity to entire star systems. Cultural Attaché Jae-sung has helped species understand each other when they thought communication was impossible. These are our warriors against ignorance and want and misunderstanding. Supreme General Crix snorted, and his scales changed color to show his displeasure. "Pretty words, human, but words do not win battles. Where are your ship commanders? Where are your ground assault leaders? Where are the beings who lead your armies into combat?" Hyun-woo smiled and spread his hands in a gesture he had practiced many times. "Earth has been blessed with peace for many generations," he said. "We have not needed to develop large military forces because we have found that most problems can be solved through cooperation and mutual understanding." The lies came easily because he had been trained to tell them. The truth was that Earth had military forces that would terrify every species in this room if they knew what humans were really capable of. But that truth could never be spoken, not here, not anywhere in galactic space. The Vorthan Chancellor Vex made a sound like crystal breaking, and his translator turned it into laughter. So the humans are either cowards or they are planning something, he said. The light around his body shifted to deep red, which Hyunwoo knew meant suspicion and anger. No species survives in this galaxy without the ability to fight. What are you hiding? Other voices joined in from around the hall. The Thanlon Admiral accused humans of building secret weapons. The Hegemony War Master suggested that Earth was preparing a massive surprise attack. The Quelax whispered among themselves in their own language, but their body movements showed agitation and fear. Hyunwoo let them talk and argue while he pretended to listen politely. His earpiece was receiving constant updates from the human intelligence ship hidden in the asteroid belt outside the station. So, Young was monitoring all alien communications, and her voice whispered in his ear, telling him which species were most suspicious and which ones might be willing to listen to reason. The debates continued for hours, with alien leaders demanding to know why humans refused to show military strength. Some accused Earth of being too weak to defend itself. Others worried that humans were secretly building a massive war machine that would threaten everyone else. A few species suggested that humans should be excluded from the Galactic Alliance until they proved they could contribute to galactic defense through it all. Hyunwoo maintained his calm diplomatic smile and kept offering alternatives. When the Morgax demanded to see human warships, he offered to share advanced agricultural techniques. When the Vorthans accused humans of hiding weapons, he suggested cultural exchange programs. When the Quelax worried about human intentions, he proposed joint scientific research projects. By the end of the first day, most of the alien delegates were frustrated and confused. They had expected either to discover that humans were pathetically weak or to uncover evidence of secret military preparations. Instead, they found only smiling diplomats who wanted to talk about farming and art and trade agreements. As the session ended and the various species returned to their quarters, Hyunwoo finally allowed himself to relax. The plan was working perfectly. Every alien species was so focused on trying to figure out human military secrets that they were completely missing Earth's real advantages. While they wasted time and resources building bigger weapons and training more soldiers, humans were investing in technology that would make them the most valuable species in the galaxy, medicine that could cure diseases that killed millions. Food production techniques that could feed entire planets' energy systems that could power civilizations for thousands of years. The aliens thought they were being clever by trying to expose human weakness. But they had no idea that the real deception was much deeper than they imagined. Hyunwoo smiled as he walked back to the human quarters. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and new questions, but he was ready. The galaxy would never learn the truth about what humans really were. And that was exactly how Earth wanted it. Captain Dae-hyun was checking the morning reports from the research station on Europa when the priority message arrived. The communication array on his ship, New Seoul, had been quiet for hours, so the sudden burst of encrypted data made him look up from his coffee. The message header showed the highest security classification, and it came directly from Earth Command. He opened the message in his private quarters and read it 3 times before he fully understood what the Galactic Alliance was asking. The Hegemony Council had decided that all member species needed to participate in joint military exercises to test their defensive capabilities. It was presented as a routine security assessment, but Dae-hyun had enough experience with alien politics to know this was really a test. The message from Admiral Yoon-ah was clear, but careful. Earth would participate in the exercises, but only with older ships and standard weapons. Nothing that would reveal the true capabilities of human military technology. Nothing that would show what humans were really capable of when they decided to fight. Dae-hyun walked to the bridge and looked out at the gas giant Jupiter floating in space like a giant marble. The research vessels around the moons continued their work, studying the ice formations and looking for signs of life. None of the scientists on those ships had any idea that their peaceful mission was about to be interrupted by a test of war. Lieutenant Yunji was monitoring communications when she noticed unusual activity on the long-range sensors. Multiple ships were approaching the Sol system, and their energy signatures matched known alien military vessels. The Morgak battleships were easy to identify because they broadcast their presence like a challenge to anyone listening. The Vorthan crystal ships were harder to spot, but their unique energy patterns showed up on the specialized sensors that Earth had developed. Within 6 hours, the alien fleet had assembled in the outer system, and it was massive. Daehyun counted at least 40 ships from 7 different species. The Morgak had brought 3 of their heavy battleships, each one bristling with plasma cannons and missile launchers. The Vorthans had sent 2 of their crystal destroyers that could bend light around themselves to become nearly invisible. The Quilek stealth fighters phase-shifted in and out of normal space, making them impossible to count accurately. Earth Command had chosen 4 ships to represent humanity in the exercises. The destroyer Busan was 23 years old by Earth standards, but it had been upgraded with newer systems. The light cruiser Incheon was even older, but its crew was among the best in the human fleet. The frigates Daegu and Gwangju were the newest ships in the group, but they were still using technology that was at least 15 years behind what Earth currently had. The alien commanders were already celebrating before the exercises even began. Supreme General Krix broadcast a message to all ships declaring that the Morgak Empire would demonstrate the superiority of aggressive tactics over human cowardice. Chancellor Vex of the Vorthans announced that logic and superior technology would easily defeat human unpredictability. The Quilek said nothing, but their ships moved in patterns that suggested they expected easy victories. What none of them understood was that humans had been preparing for this moment for 3 years. Every engagement would be monitored and recorded not just by the official observers but by hidden sensors throughout the system. Earth Command wanted to learn everything possible about alien military capabilities, while revealing as little as possible about human ones. The first exercise took place in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. The scenario was simple. Human ships had to defend a mining station while alien forces tried to capture it. The Morgak fleet charged straight at the human formation, expecting to overwhelm them with superior firepower and numbers. Captain Daehyun had studied Morgak tactics for months, and he knew they always attacked the same way. They formed a wall of battleships and advanced at maximum speed while firing everything they had. The strategy worked well against other alien species because most of them either fled or tried to match the Morgak ship for ship. Humans did something different. Instead of meeting the charge head-on, Daehyun ordered his ships to scatter and use the asteroids for cover. The destroyer Busan disappeared behind a large rock while the cruiser Incheon used its engines to push a smaller asteroid into the path of the advancing Morgak fleet. The frigates Daegu and Gwangju split up and began moving in directions that seemed random but were actually calculated to confuse the alien targeting systems. Supreme General Krix roared orders at his fleet, demanding they pursue the fleeing humans, but the asteroid field made it impossible for the large Morgak ships to maneuver effectively. The human vessels were smaller and more agile, weaving between rocks that would have crushed the alien battleships. When the Morgak finally reached the mining station, they found it empty. The human ships had used the time to evacuate the facility and set up an ambush. Captain Yunji brought the Incheon around behind the largest Morgak battleship and fired a spread of simulated torpedoes at its engines. The computer system registered the hits as critical damage, and the battleship was declared destroyed. The exercise continued for 2 hours with similar results. Human ships used tactics that the aliens had never seen before. They fought like they were hunting prey rather than defending territory. They used the environment as a weapon, turning asteroids into missiles and gravity wells into traps. They attacked weak points instead of trying to match alien strength with human strength. When the simulation ended, the Morgak had lost 2 battleships and a cruiser, while the humans had lost only 1 frigate. Supreme General Krix demanded to review the tactical recordings, claiming the humans must have cheated somehow. The other alien observers were equally confused by what they had witnessed. The second exercise took place near the orbit of Mars and involved stealth combat against the Quileks. The scenario required human ships to find and destroy hidden alien vessels while protecting a convoy of supply ships. The Twi'leks were confident because their stealth technology was considered the best in the galaxy. What they did not expect was that humans had developed sensors specifically designed to detect Twi'lek ships. Dr. Minho had spent 2 years studying the quantum signatures that Twi'leks stealth fields produced, and Earth had quietly installed the new detection systems on all their military vessels. Lieutenant Unji was the first to spot a Twi'leks fighter trying to approach the convoy. She used a technique that Earth Command called ghost hunting, firing sensor pulses in patterns that would reveal cloaked ships without alerting them that they had been detected. The Twi'leks pilot never knew he was being tracked until human missiles struck his ship. The exercise became a disaster, for the Twi'leks as human ships systematically hunted down their supposedly invisible vessels. The aliens had never faced an enemy that could see through their stealth technology, and they had no backup tactics when their primary advantage was removed. The end of the week, the alien observers were deeply disturbed. Human ships had won 7 out of 10 exercises despite using older technology and smaller fleets. The victories should have been impossible, but the results were clear. The humans were fighting with skills and techniques that no other species had ever developed. Admiral Voss watched the exercises from Earth Command and smiled. The aliens thought they were testing human military capabilities, but they were actually revealing their own weaknesses. Every tactic they used, every formation they preferred, every response to unexpected situations was being recorded and analyzed. The real test was just beginning, and the aliens had no idea how much they had already revealed about themselves. Earth had learned exactly what it needed to know about galactic military thinking, and the knowledge was both useful and terrifying. The galaxy was full of species that had forgotten how to be predators. Humans had never forgotten. Dr. Minho floated in the observation deck of the science vessel, watching the 3rd day of military exercises through the reinforced windows. The alien fleets were regrouping after another embarrassing defeat, and he could see the frustration in their ship movements. The Morgak battleships were flying in tight, angry formations while the Vorthon crystal ships flickered with colors that meant confusion and doubt. The exercises had been designed to showcase alien military superiority over the supposedly weak human forces, but everything was going wrong for the galactic powers. Human ships kept winning engagements they should have lost, and using tactics that made no sense to alien commanders. The pattern was becoming impossible to ignore. Minho activated his recording device and began making notes for his daily report to Earth Command. The Morgak Empire had just lost another simulated battle to Captain Daehyun forces, even though they outnumbered the humans 3-1. The alien commanders had used their standard overwhelming assault tactics, charging straight at the human ships with maximum firepower. But humans had done something that no other species would even consider. They had deliberately damaged their own ship engines to create false sensor readings that made the Morgak think the human vessels were crippled and retreating. When the alien fleet moved in to finish off the apparently helpless humans, they flew directly into a trap. The human ships had been pretending to be disabled while actually maneuvering into perfect attack positions. Using momentum from their fake retreat, they had launched a coordinated strike that destroyed the Morgak flagship and scattered the rest of their fleet. The alien commanders were still trying to understand how humans could be so deceptive in combat. Minho switched his attention to the Vorthon crystal ships, which were supposed to be undetectable when they activated their light-bending stealth systems. The technology was considered impossible to counter because it worked by manipulating photons at the quantum level. No known sensor could penetrate the effect, except human sensors could and did. The truth was that Earth had been studying captured force and technology for 5 years and had developed countermeasures that the aliens knew nothing about. But the official explanation given to the galactic observers was much simpler. Human pilots had learned to look for the subtle gravitational distortions that the crystal ships created when they moved through space. It was a lie that sounded believable because it was based on real science. The Vorthon ships did create gravitational effects, but they were far too small for normal sensors. To detect, the real detection system used quantum entanglement patterns that Earth had discovered by accident while studying alien artifacts. Chancellor Vex was demanding a full investigation into human sensor technology, claiming that no species should be able to penetrate Vorthon stealth fields. The other alien leaders were equally confused by human capabilities that seemed to exceed their understanding of what was possible. The worst defeat came during the fourth day, when the Quilek stealth fighters tried to use their phase-shifting ability to attack a human convoy. The Quileks could move in and out of normal space, making them nearly impossible to target with conventional weapons. They had never been defeated in direct combat by any galactic species. Lieutenant Yunji was commanding the escort ships when the Quilek's attack began. Her sensors immediately detected the quantum signatures of ships moving between dimensions, and she coordinated a response that shocked the alien observers. The human vessels began firing at empty space in patterns that seemed completely random. Then the Quilek ship started exploding. The aliens watching the exercise could not understand what was happening. The human weapons appeared to be hitting invisible targets with impossible accuracy. Captain Dae-hyun explained that human crews had developed new mathematical models for predicting where phase-shifted ships would rematerialize based on quantum probability calculations. It was another lie wrapped in enough truth to sound convincing. The real explanation was that Earth had been tracking Quilek's movements for years and had learned to predict their attack patterns. The phase-shifting technology followed specific rules that humans had figured out through careful observation and testing. The Quileks were so disturbed by their defeat that they requested an immediate end to the combat exercises, claiming that humans must be using weapons that violated galactic warfare treaties. The other species quickly agreed because they were equally uncomfortable with human military performance. Supreme General Crix called an emergency meeting of all alien commanders to discuss what they had witnessed. The session was held on the Morgak flagship, and humans were deliberately excluded. Minho managed to monitor their communications using hidden listening devices that Earth had placed throughout the system. The alien leaders were angry and confused by what they had seen. Human military capabilities made no sense according to their understanding of galactic warfare. No species should be able to consistently defeat superior forces using inferior technology. The victories were impossible unless humans were lying about their true capabilities. Master Quelm of the Hegemony Council proposed that humans were using secret weapons that they had hidden from galactic inspectors. Admiral Zoss of the Thanlun Confederacy suggested that Earth had discovered some kind of new military technology that gave them an unfair advantage. Chancellor Vex insisted that humans must have been planning these exercises for years and had developed specific countermeasures for each alien species. They were all wrong, but they were also all partially right. Humans had been preparing for these exercises, but not in the way the aliens imagined. Earth had been studying galactic military thinking for decades and had discovered something that terrified human leadership. Every major alien species fought like prey, animals trying to avoid conflict rather than win it. The Morgak looked aggressive, but their tactics were actually defensive, designed to discourage attackers rather than destroy them. The Vorthon appeared coldly logical, but their strategies focused on minimizing losses rather than maximizing damage. The Quilek seemed dangerous, but their stealth technology was meant for escape rather than assault. Every alien military doctrine in the galaxy was based on survival rather than victory. They had developed weapons and ships and tactics designed to make wars end quickly, with minimal casualties rather than to completely defeat their enemies. The concept of total warfare was alien to them. Humans were different. Human military thinking was based on millions of years of evolution as persistence hunters who chased prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. Human tactics were designed to find weaknesses and exploit them ruthlessly. Human strategies focused on winning completely rather than simply surviving. The aliens had no idea that they were not just testing human military capabilities. They were revealing their own fundamental weaknesses to the one species in the galaxy that had evolved to recognize and exploit exactly those kinds of vulnerabilities. Minho finished his daily report and transmitted it to Earth using quantum encryption. The message contained detailed analysis of every alien military doctrine weakness, every tactical mistake, every strategic flaw that the exercises had revealed. Admiral Voss received the report at Earth Command and smiled grimly. The galaxy thought it was evaluating human military strength, but it was actually teaching humans how to defeat every species that might threaten Earth. The masquerade was working perfectly. Dr. Sujin walked through the underground corridors beneath Seoul, carrying the most classified files in human space. The facility was built 300 meters below the surface and protected by technology that could hide it from any known alien sensor system. The meeting room she entered contained the 12 most important people on Earth, though most of the galaxy had never heard their names. President Ji-hoon was already seated at the head of the table, reviewing reports from the military exercises. Admiral Yuna had just returned from the outer system. With detailed recordings of every alien engagement, General Tai-min was studying tactical analysis that would have terrified every species in the galaxy if they knew it existed. But the most important person in the room was Sujin herself, because she was Earth-leading expert on something the galaxy had never encountered before. Xenopsychology, the study of how alien minds worked and what drove their behavior. Her research had been going on for 8 years, ever since first contact with galactic civilization. The files she carried contained psychological profiles of every major species in the galaxy based on thousands of hours of observation, interaction, and analysis. The conclusions were so disturbing that only 13 people on Earth were authorized to know them. The 14th person was about to learn the truth, intelligence officer. So, Young took her seat at the table and waited for the briefing that would change everything she thought she knew about humanity's place in the galaxy. She had been monitoring alien communications for 5 years and had noticed patterns that troubled her, but she had never understood what those patterns meant. Until now, Sujin activated the holographic display and began with the most basic question that had driven her research. Why were humans so different from every other intelligent species in the galaxy? The answer had taken years to discover, and it challenged every assumption about how evolution shaped intelligent life. Every known alien species had evolved from prey animals or creatures that survived by avoiding conflict. The Morgak looked like fierce predators, but their ancestors had been herd animals that used group defense to protect themselves from hunters. The Vorthon seemed coldly logical, but they descended from creatures that hid in crystal caves when danger approached. The Quillex appeared sneaky and dangerous, but they evolved from small animals that survived through camouflage and flight. The pattern was universal across 43 different species. Every single intelligent race in the galaxy had developed sapience as a response to being hunted by something, else they became smart in order to hide better, run faster, cooperate more effectively, or build tools that would help them escape predators. Humans were the exception. Sujin displayed the fossil evidence and genetic analysis that proved what Earth scientists had suspected for decades. Humans had evolved from persistence hunters who chased prey across vast distances until the animals collapsed from exhaustion. Human intelligence had developed not to avoid violence, but to become better at tracking, hunting, and killing. The implications were staggering. Every human instinct, every cultural development, every technological advancement had been shaped by millions of years of predatory evolution. Human cooperation had evolved from pack hunting strategies. Human tool-making had begun with weapons. Human problem-solving focused on overcoming obstacles rather than avoiding them. So Young stared at the data in growing horror, realizing what this meant for humanity's future in the galaxy. She had always wondered why human entertainment seemed so violent compared to alien media. Why human sports simulated combat and territorial conquest. Why human children played games that taught strategy and competition. Now she understood that these were not cultural quirks. They were genetic imperatives. Human behavior that seemed normal on Earth would be classified as pathologically aggressive by galactic standards. What humans considered healthy competition would look like preparation for warfare. To alien observers, President Ji-hoon activated another section of the display showing intercepted alien communications from the past 6 months. The evidence was overwhelming. Galactic species were already becoming suspicious of human behavior. They had noticed that humans reacted to danger differently than other species. Where aliens sought to flee or hide, humans often chose to attack. Where aliens looked for compromise, humans prepared for conflict. The Morgak Empire had filed reports describing human colonists as unusually aggressive in defending their settlements. The Vorthon Collective had noted that human traders seemed to view every negotiation as a form of combat. The Quillex had complained that human explorers showed no proper fear when entering dangerous regions of space. Admiral Yuna presented the most disturbing evidence of all detailed analysis of human military performance during the recent exercises. The alien observers had been confused by human tactics, but they had also been frightened. Human crews had demonstrated abilities that no prey species would ever develop. Human pilots could track multiple targets while maneuvering at high speed because their brains had evolved to hunt fast-moving animals. Human commanders could coordinate complex attacks while adapting to changing conditions because their ancestors had hunted in packs. Human engineers could design weapons that exploited specific weaknesses because predators learned to target vulnerable areas. The aliens were beginning to realize that something was fundamentally different about humans, but they had not yet understood what that difference meant. If they ever discovered the truth, it would trigger the greatest crisis in galactic history. General Taman explained the strategic situation with brutal clarity. Every major species in the galaxy would unite against humanity if they realized that Earth was inhabited by evolved predators. The galaxy had never encountered sapient hunters before, and they would view human existence as an existential threat to all prey species. The evidence was already mounting. Human languages contained hundreds of words for different types of violence, while most alien languages had no concepts for deliberate aggression between intelligent beings. Human entertainment celebrated conflict in ways that horrified alien observers. Human children learned competitive games that taught dominance and territorial control. What made the situation even more dangerous was that humans were not just predators. They were the most efficient predators that evolution had ever produced. Human persistence hunting had made them capable of tracking prey across continents and waiting days or weeks for the perfect moment. To strike, human pack coordination made them devastating in group conflicts. Human tool use had evolved specifically for killing. Rather than defense, Sujin concluded the briefing with the most frightening realization of all. Humans were not just different from other galactic species, they were the natural enemy of every intelligent race in the universe. The galaxy was full of evolved prey animals who had developed technology and civilization, but had never lost their fundamental fear of being hunted. If alien species ever understood what humans actually were, they would not try to negotiate or coexist. They would recognize humanity as the greatest threat their species had ever faced, and they would unite to destroy Earth before humans could destroy them. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Earth had been accidentally masquerading as just another peaceful species when they were actually the galaxy's apex predators. The deception had worked so far, but it could not last. Forever intelligence officer. So Young finally understood why Earth never sent military representatives to peace summits. It was not because humans were weak or hiding secret weapons. It was because human military thinking was so fundamentally different from alien military thinking that it would immediately expose humanity's true nature. The masquerade had to continue, because the alternative was a war that would determine whether predators or prey would control the galaxy. And everyone in that room knew which side would win. Ambassador Karim of the Delthan Collective had been traveling for 2 weeks to reach the secret meeting location on Luna, and he still did not understand why the humans had requested this gathering. The message from Earth had been carefully worded, but urgent, asking for a private discussion about matters of galactic security that could not be transmitted through normal channels. The Delthans were one of the few species that humans trusted, partially because they had evolved from omnivores rather than pure prey animals. Their ancestors had been both hunters and hunted, which gave them a different perspective on survival and conflict. Ambassador Karim had spent 3 years working with human diplomats and had developed respect for their unusual approach to problem-solving. President Ji-hoon was waiting in the secure conference room, along with Dr. Sujin and Admiral Yuna. The facility was hidden beneath the lunar surface and protected by technology that Karim had never seen before. The walls seemed to absorb sound and light in ways that made him feel like he was floating in empty space. The human president activated a privacy field that would prevent any electronic monitoring, and then began speaking in the careful, diplomatic language that Karim knew meant something important was about to be revealed. Earth had discovered information about galactic military capabilities that needed to be shared with a trusted ally. But the knowledge came with dangers that could affect both species. Dr. Sujin took over the presentation and began displaying data that made Karim lean forward in surprise. The humans had been conducting detailed psychological analysis of every major species in the galaxy, studying their behavior patterns, military doctrines, and evolutionary backgrounds. The research had revealed something that no one had suspected about the nature of galactic civilization. Every intelligent species except humans had evolved from prey animals. The implications hit Kareem like a physical blow, and he found himself staring at the evidence in growing fascination and horror. The Morgak Empire looked aggressive, but their tactics were actually defensive, designed to discourage attacks rather than achieve victory. The Vorthon Collective appeared logical, but their strategies focused on minimizing losses rather than maximizing gains. The Quileks seemed dangerous, but their technology was built for escape rather than assault. Karim realized that his own species fit the pattern perfectly. The Delthans had developed diplomacy and trade as ways to avoid conflict rather than win it. Their exploration ships were designed for quick retreat. Their colonies were built in defensive positions. Their entire culture was based on finding safe places to survive and prosper. Humans were completely different. Admiral Yuna explained what the military exercises had really revealed. Human ships had won engagements through tactics that no prey species would ever develop. Human crews had demonstrated hunting instincts that were invisible to alien observers. Human strategies had focused on finding weaknesses and exploiting them without mercy. The exercises had been designed to test human military capabilities, but they had actually exposed the fundamental differences between predator and prey psychology. Human victory had not come from superior technology or secret weapons. It had come from millions of years of evolution that had shaped humans into perfect hunters. President Ji-hoon leaned forward and asked the question that Kareem had been dreading. What would happen if other galactic species discovered the truth about human nature? The answer was obvious and terrifying. Every species in the galaxy would unite against Earth, viewing humanity as an existential threat to all prey-based civilizations. The evidence was already mounting. Alien observers were becoming suspicious of human behavior, noting that humans reacted to danger differently than other species. Human entertainment celebrated violence in ways that disturbed alien sensibilities. Human children played competitive games that looked like training for warfare. Human languages contained concepts for aggression that most alien minds could not even comprehend. Dr. Sujin displayed the most disturbing evidence: intercepted communications between alien governments discussing the human problem. Several species had noted that human colonies were established in dangerous locations that other races would avoid. Human traders seemed to view every negotiation as a form of contest. Human explorers showed inappropriate fearlessness when facing unknown dangers. The pattern was becoming impossible to hide. Human behavior that seemed normal on Earth appeared pathologically aggressive to species that had evolved to avoid conflict. The masquerade was working for now, but it could not last forever. Eventually, someone would realize what humans actually were. Kareem asked about Earth contingency plans, and the answer made his blood run cold. Human military strategists had been preparing for the possibility of galactic war since first contact with alien civilization. Hidden fleets were stationed throughout human space using technology that was decades ahead of what the galaxy had seen. Secret weapons had been developed specifically to counter the military capabilities of each major species. If the galactic community ever united against Earth, humanity was prepared to fight a war unlike anything the galaxy had ever experienced. Not because humans were evil, but because humans were the only species that had evolved to be efficient at warfare. The meeting continued for hours as Karim learned about the true scope of human military capabilities. The ships that had participated in the exercises were obsolete by Earth standards, using technology that was 20 years old. Human pilots had been operating under strict rules that prevented them from using their full training and instincts. Human tactics had been deliberately limited to avoid revealing the predatory nature of human strategic thinking. The real human military was something that would have given every galactic species nightmares. Fleets of ships designed not just to win battles but to hunt down and destroy fleeing enemies. Weapons that targeted the psychological weaknesses of prey species rather than just their physical vulnerabilities. Strategies that focused on total victory rather than negotiated settlement. Admiral Yuna explained that Earth had been studying galactic military doctrine for years and had identified fatal flaws in every species' approach to warfare. Alien tactics were designed to end conflicts quickly with minimal casualties rather than achieve complete victory. Their weapons were built to discourage attacks rather than destroy enemies. Their strategies assumed that opponents would eventually seek compromise rather than fight to the death. These assumptions would be disastrous in a war against humanity. Kareem left the meeting with his worldview fundamentally changed. He understood now why Earth never sent military representatives to peace summits. It was not because humans were weak or hiding conventional weapons. It was because human military thinking was so alien to galactic norms that it would immediately expose humanity. True nature. The galaxy believed that intelligent species naturally avoided conflict and sought peaceful solutions to disputes. This assumption was based on the fact that every known civilization had evolved from prey animals that survived by fleeing from danger. The idea that intelligence could evolve in predators had never occurred to anyone. Humans had been accidentally masquerading as just another peaceful species, when they were actually the most dangerous predators the galaxy had ever encountered. The deception was not malicious. It was necessary for survival. If alien species ever realized what Earth truly was, they would panic and unite against humanity. As Kareem returned to Delthan space, he carried with him the knowledge that would change everything. The galaxy was not a community of peaceful species learning to coexist. It was a collection of prey animals who had developed technology and civilization, but had never lost their fundamental nature, and living among them unrecognized and undetected were the most perfect hunters that evolution had ever created. The masquerade. Continued human diplomats smiled and offered agricultural techniques. Human scientists shared medical advances. Human traders negotiated commercial agreements. And in secret facilities around the world, human military strategists prepared for the day when the galaxy would discover that Earth's greatest export was not technology or culture, it was death. The galaxy would learn eventually that some species were born to hunt and others were born to be hunted, but by then it would be too late to change the outcome of a war between predators and prey.